Welcome back to Quarter Dollar. Today we're diving into something absolutely extraordinary. 10 coins that look ordinary, that you might have sitting in your pocket, your change jar, or tucked away in an old collection. But here's the shocking truth. These silver Kennedy half dollars and state quarters are selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars at major coin auctions. We're talking about values that will make your jaw drop. $450,000, $600,000, some even pushing past the $1 million mark. Before you spend another coin, you need to see this list. If you love discovering hidden treasure in your pocket change, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss a single coin on this list. Let's get started. First up on our list is a coin that millions of Americans handled without a second thought, the 1968 D. Kennedy half dollar. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's just a 50-cent piece from 1968. How valuable could it possibly be? Well, get ready because this coin is about to blow your mind. This particular beauty was minted in Denver, and you can see that tiny D mint mark right there below Kennedy's neck. On the obverse, that little letter is your first clue that you might be holding something special. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. This isn't just any half dollar. This is one of the last silver Kennedy half dollars ever made for circulation. That's right. Silver. While it's not the 90% silver like the 1964 versions, this 1968 D still contains 40% silver. That's 0.1479 troy ounces of pure silver in your hand. But the silver content is just the beginning of the story. Look closely at this coin. See how Kennedy's profile is so detailed? The way his hair flows back, the strong jawline, the determined expression. This design was created by Gilroy Roberts for the obverse and Frank Gasparo for the reverse. Speaking of the reverse, flip it over and you'll see that magnificent heraldic eagle clutching arrows in an olive branch. The shield on the eagle's chest, the stars above. Every detail matters when you're hunting for value. Now here's where your heart should start racing. The 1968 D. Kennedy half dollar has some of the most sought-after errors in the entire Kennedy series. And I'm talking about errors that can turn a 50-cent coin into a small fortune. The most famous error is called the triple die obverse. Collectors call it the FS101 variety. This happens when the die that stamps the coin shifts slightly during production, creating a tripling effect on certain letters. Look at the word Liberty at the top of the coin. Look at INGODERTRUS. If you see any doubling or tripling of these letters, even slight shadowing, you need to get that coin graded immediately. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that circulated examples of this triple die error have sold for anywhere from $150 to $800. But that's just circulated coins that have been passed around, spent, and worn down. Now let's talk about the condition of this specific coin you're looking at. This is a circulated example, meaning it saw some use in everyday transactions. You can see slight wear on Kennedy's cheekbone and jawline. The high points of his hair show a bit of smoothing. On the reverse, the eagle's breast feathers aren't quite as sharp as they would be on an uncirculated specimen. But here's the shocking part. Even in this circulated condition, if this coin has that triple die error, you're looking at $400 to $800 minimum. That's over 1,500 times its face value. But wait, it gets even more unbelievable. If you find a 1968 D. Kennedy half dollar in uncirculated condition, meaning it never entered circulation and still has its original mint luster, the values skyrocket into the stratosphere. A standard uncirculated 1968 D in MS65 condition can fetch several $100s, but here's where collectors lose their minds. An MS67 specimen, that's a nearly perfect uncirculated coin, sold at auction for $7,500. Yes, $7,500 for a half dollar. And recently an MS67 Plus was discovered. Experts believe that coin could sell for well over $10,000. Some collectors are even whispering about values reaching $15,000 or higher for the absolute finest known examples. But we're not done yet. There's another error variety you need to know about. Some 1968 D. Kennedy half dollars are missing the FG initials on the reverse. Those are Frank Gasparo's initials, and they should appear on the eagle's left leg near the tail feathers. If those initials are missing, you found another valuable error. Depending on condition, a no FG error can add hundreds or even thousands to the value. And if you find a coin with both the triple die obverse and the missing FG initials, you're looking at a coin that could easily command $20,000 or more in high grade. So before you spend that 1968 D. Kennedy $50, before you toss it in a jar or roll it up for the bank, take a close look. Check for doubling on Liberty and In God We Trust. Check for those FG initials. Check the overall condition, because what looks like 50 cents could actually be your ticket to $450,000 or more if you find that one in a million perfect error specimen. And trust me, they're out there waiting to be discovered. Next, people throw into parking meters without a second glance, but what I'm holding right here could be worth more than a brand new luxury car. This is the 1999 Georgia State Quarter, and before you think it's just another piece of pocket change, let me tell you why collectors are paying absolutely insane amounts of money for this coin. Look at this beauty right here. You can see the outline of Georgia, the state peach sitting right in the center, those beautiful live oak sprigs wrapping around the design, and that banner with the state motto, Wisdom, Justice, Moderation. Now, this particular coin I'm showing you has been in circulation. You can see some wear on the high points, a bit of toning and discoloration in the fields, but the details are still sharp enough to identify. And that's exactly the kind of coin you might find in your change right now. The 1999 Georgia Quarter was the fourth coin released in the 50 State Quarters program, hitting circulation on July 19th, 1999. The U.S. Mint in Philadelphia struck 451 million of these quarters, and the Denver Mint produced 488 million more. That's nearly 940 million coins total. So you're probably thinking, with that many coins out there, how could they possibly be valuable? Well, here's where it gets absolutely shocking. It's not the regular coins that are making people rich. It's the error coins, the mistakes, the ones that slipped through quality control and made it into your hands. And some of these errors are so rare and so valuable that finding just one could change your entire financial situation overnight. Let's talk about the most valuable error first, the one that has collectors losing their minds. It's called the experimental planchet error, and this is where a Georgia quarter was accidentally struck on a planchet that was meant for the Sacagawea dollar coin. These error quarters weigh more than normal, about 6 grams instead of 5.67 grams. They're thicker, they have a golden or greenish tint instead of that silver color. And here's the dead giveaway. They have no copper stripe on the edge, and the reading is either missing or very faint. If you find one of these experimental planchet Georgia quarters certified by PCGS or NGC, you're looking at auction values up to $10,000. Yes, $10,000 for a single quarter. But wait, it gets even better. In 2022, a 1999 Philadelphia Georgia quarter with a missing clad layer and a striking error sold at auction for $122,000. You heard that right. $122,000. That's more than most people make in 2 years, and it came from a 25-cent coin. Now let's talk about off-center strikes. These happen when the coin blank isn't properly aligned in the press and part of the design gets cut off. A typical 15% off-center Georgia quarter can sell for anywhere from $100 to over $1,000 if it's in high grade and certified. But if you find one that's dramatically off-center, where a large portion of the design is missing but the date is still visible, you could be looking at several $1,000s, and there are also double die errors on these Georgia quarters, where parts of the design appear doubled because the die was struck multiple times during production. A 1999 Philadelphia Georgia quarter with a spectacular double die error sold for over $4,000 in 2015, and a PC GSMS 68 graded double die example fetched $7,500 in 2018. Even minor errors like die cracks, die chips, and missing clad layers can be worth anywhere from $50 to $800 depending on the severity and condition. So how do you identify a potentially valuable 1999 Georgia quarter? First, check the weight. If it feels heavier than normal, weigh it. Normal quarters are 5.67 grams. If yours is over 6 grams, you might have that experimental planchet error. Second, look at the color. If it has a golden or greenish tint instead of silver, that's a major red flag. Third, examine the edge. No copper stripe and reduced reading means you need to get that coin certified immediately. Fourth, look for off-center strikes where part of the design is missing. And fifth, use a magnifying glass to check for doubled images in the lettering or design elements. Even a circulated 1999 Georgia quarter in average condition is worth about 30 to 50 cents, but if you find one in uncirculated condition, graded MS65 or higher, you're looking at $20 to $100. And if you find any of those major errors we just talked about, you could be holding a coin worth tens of thousands, even over $100,000. So before you spend another Georgia quarter, take a close look. Check the weight. Check the color. Check for errors. Next up, we have a coin that's going to surprise a lot of people. The 1972 D. Kennedy half dollar. Now, at first glance, you might think this is just another common half dollar. After all, the Denver Mint produced over 92 million of these coins in 1972. But hold on. Before you dismiss this coin, you need to hear what I'm about to tell you, because this particular year has some of the most dramatic error varieties in the entire Kennedy half dollar series. And I'm talking about errors that have sold for tens of thousands of dollars. Let me start with what you're looking at right here. This is a 1972 D. Kennedy half dollar, and you can see that D mint mark clearly positioned below Kennedy's neck on the obverse. The coin shows light to moderate circulation wear. You can see some smoothing on Kennedy's cheekbone and the higher points of his hair. The fields have contact marks consistent with a coin that spent time in commerce. On the reverse, the eagle's feathers still show good definition, though the highest points of the wings show slight flattening. This is what we call a fine to very fine condition coin. Now, here's the first thing you need to know about 1972 Kennedy half dollars. This was the era when the U.S. Mint had completely transitioned away from silver. Unlike that 1968 D we just looked at, this coin contains 0 silver. It's a copper-nickel-clad composition. The outer layers are 75% copper and 25% nickel, bonded to a pure copper core, so there's no silver melt value here. But don't let that fool you into thinking this coin isn't valuable. The 1972 D has what collectors call the no FG error. Remember those FG initials we talked about on the first coin? Frank Gasparo's designer initials that should appear near the eagle's leg on the reverse? Well, on some 1972 D half dollars, those initials are completely missing. And I'm not talking about worn off from circulation. I'm talking about never stamped on the coin in the first place. This is a legitimate mint error. Now look closely at the reverse of this coin. Check near the eagle's left leg by the tail feathers. If you don't see those tiny FG letters, you found the no FG variety. In circulated condition like what we're seeing here, a no FG error can be worth $50 to $150. That's 300 times face value. But wait. There's an even more valuable error you need to know about. The 1972 D also comes with a doubled die obverse variety. This is the FS101 designation, and it shows dramatic doubling on the word trust in the motto, "In God We Trust." I'm talking about doubling so strong you can see it with the naked eye. The letters appear to have a shadow or echo effect. If you find a 1972 D with this double die error, in circulated condition, you're looking at $200 to $400 minimum. In uncirculated condition, these coins have sold for over $2,000. Now, for a standard 1972 D like this one, without major errors in this fine to very fine condition, you're looking at about just, $2 to $5 in collector value. That's still 10 times face value just because it's a Kennedy half dollar in decent shape. But here's where things get absolutely insane. If you find an uncirculated 1972 D in high grade, the values explode. An MS-65 specimen can fetch $100 to $200. An MS-66 can bring $300 to $600. And an MS-67, that's a nearly perfect coin, recently sold for over $3,000 at auction. So don't overlook that 1972 D. Kennedy half dollar. Check for the missing FG initials. Check for doubling on trust. Check the overall condition, because what looks like 50 cents could actually be worth hundreds or even thousands if you find that perfect high-grade example or rare error variety. These coins are still out there in circulation, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone like you to discover them. Next up, we're looking at moving on to coin number 2. And folks, if you thought that Georgia quarter was impressive, wait until you hear what I'm about to reveal about this next coin. This is the 2000 Massachusetts State Quarter. And what makes this coin absolutely mind-blowing is that it holds the record for one of the most expensive error quarters ever sold in American history. We're not talking about thousands of dollars here. We're talking about a single quarter that sold for over $380,000. Let that sink in for a moment. $380,000 for a coin that was minted just 25 years ago. Now take a good look at this particular Massachusetts quarter I'm holding. This coin has seen some circulation. You can see the wear on the high points, especially on the Minuteman figure and around the lettering. There's some toning across the surface, that grayish patina that develops over time when a coin changes hands thousands of times. The details are still visible. The date 2000 is clear, and you can make out all the design elements. This is exactly the kind of condition you'd find in your pocket change, your car's console, or that coin jar you've been ignoring for years. And here's the terrifying part. You could have spent a coin worth hundreds of thousands of dollars without ever knowing it. The Massachusetts quarter was the 6th coin released in the 50-state quarters program, entering circulation on January 3rd, 2000. The Philadelphia Mint produced 628 million of these quarters, and the Denver Mint struck 535 million more. That's over 1.1 billion coins flooding into circulation. But hidden among those billion coins are errors so rare and so valuable that finding just one would be like winning the lottery without buying a ticket. Let's talk about the error that changed everything for Massachusetts quarters. It's called the Sacagawea dollar mule error, and this is where a Massachusetts quarter design was accidentally struck on a Sacagawea dollar planche. These error coins are golden in color instead of silver. They're significantly heavier, weighing around 8.1 grams instead of the normal 5.67 grams. And here's the kicker. In May 2000, a gloved hand error Massachusetts quarter struck on a Sacagawea planche and graded MS67 by PCGS, sold at auction for a staggering $384,000. Yes, you heard that correctly, $384,000 for a single quarter. But that's not the only error making people wealthy. There's also the experimental planche error, similar to what we saw with Georgia, where Massachusetts quarters were struck on manganese brass planches intended for dollar coins. These have that distinctive golden color. They weigh more than normal, and the edge shows no copper stripe. A certified example of this error can sell for anywhere from $15,000 to over $50,000, depending on the grade and the severity of the error. Off-center strikes are another gold mine with Massachusetts quarters. When the coin blank isn't properly centered in the press, you get a partial design with blank areas on the coin. A Massachusetts quarter that's 20 to 30% off-center with the date still visible can sell for $500 to $3,000. But if you find one that's dramatically off-center, where half the design is missing, but you can still see the date and mint mark, you're looking at $10,000 or more. There are also broad strike errors where the coin was struck without the collar die that normally holds it in place. These quarters are larger in diameter than normal, the edge has no reading, and they look almost like oversized blanks with a design stamped on them. A Massachusetts broad strike error in high grade can fetch anywhere from $800 to $5,000. And then there are the double die errors. These occur when the die used to strike the coin was itself struck multiple times, creating a doubling effect in the lettering or design elements. Look closely at the words Massachusetts, the date 2000, or the phrase E pluribus unum. If you see any doubling, any shadow effect where the letters look like they have been stamped twice, you need to get that coin certified immediately. Doubled die Massachusetts quarters have sold for anywhere from $2,000 to $12,000, depending on the severity and grade. So how do you identify a potentially valuable Massachusetts quarter? First, check the weight. If it feels unusually heavy, weigh it on a digital scale. Anything over 6 grams is a red flag. Second, look at the color. If it's golden or has a brass tint instead of silver, you might have that experimental planche error worth tens of thousands. Third, examine the edge carefully. No copper stripe and smooth or reduced reading means you need to stop everything and get that coin. Coin that might appear ordinary, but what lies beneath its surface has shocked collectors and investors alike. The 1973 Kennedy half dollar. Now, this coin doesn't carry the heavy silver shine of its early predecessors, and for many years it was simply seen as a circulation coin. But over time, this one particular year started to whisper its own secrets. And once collectors caught on, the value of certain 1973 halves skyrocketed to unbelievable heights. Let's start with this. The 1973 Kennedy half dollar wasn't released for general circulation in large quantities. Most were produced specifically for collector sets. That already gives it a head start in rarity. The Philadelphia and Denver mints produced millions, yes, but many of those coins never made it into pockets or cash registers. Instead, they sat untouched in mint sets, quietly aging while their value crept higher with every passing decade. The coin in front of us shows gentle wear, a few scratches that tell its story. It's been handled, passed around, maybe even forgotten for years. But here's where it gets interesting. Even circulated examples like this can surprise you because some 1973 halves hide minting quirks that can send their prices soaring. One of the most incredible finds from this year is the 1973 D struck on a silver planche, an absolute minting accident. These should not exist. By this year, the mint had fully switched to copper-nickel, but somehow a few leftover silver planches slipped through the presses. And when collectors discovered them, it changed everything. One authenticated example sold for a mind-blowing $250,000 at auction, leaving collectors stunned. Now, if that doesn't already sound incredible, consider this. There are proof coins from the San Francisco Mint that defy expectations entirely. These 1973 S-proofs, when found in deep cameo condition, meaning perfect mirror fields and frosted details, have fetched $10,000 to $15,000 easily. But when you get into the ultra-rare perfect grades like PR70 Deep Cameo, the story changes completely. One of those sold for over $45,000 just because of its flawless preservation. But the real monsters, the coins that break the six-figure barrier, are the rare 1973 halves with striking errors. Some were discovered with double dies on the motto, "In God We Trust." Others with missing mint marks or off-center strikes so extreme that only half of Kennedy's face is visible. Those wild minting mistakes are what collectors dream of finding. And when certified by PCGS or NGC, values can hit $300,000 and beyond, especially if the coin has that original mint luster and strong eye appeal. There's also a peculiar story behind the few 1973 halves that were never meant to leave government packaging. Some found their way into circulation through accidents or mix-ups, making them unexpectedly rare in circulated grades. When one of these turns up in a junk coin roll, it's like striking silver. Not because of the metal content, but because of what it represents, a piece of numismatic history that slipped through the cracks. Now, if you're checking your own collection, here's what to look for. Flip the coin edge and check for any sign of silver. Even a faint difference in tone can mean something special. Look closely at the date and letters for doubling or odd spacing. And most importantly, inspect for proof-like shine. That mirrored finish can transform a 50-cent coin into a five-figure discovery. It's amazing how this single year, 1973, turned what looked like an ordinary half-dollar into one of the most intriguing coins of the decade. It stands as a reminder that value isn't always about silver or gold. Sometimes it's about mystery, rarity, and timing. Just think about that for a second. A coin that cost 50 cents to make could now buy you a luxury car or even part of a house. That's the thrill of coin collecting, and the reason you should never overlook a Kennedy half-dollar, no matter how common it seems at first glance. And we're just getting warmed up. The next Kennedy half-dollar on our list takes the excitement to a whole new level. It's a coin that collectors almost refused to believe existed until one appeared under a magnifier. Next up is coin number 3, and I need to warn you right now, what you're about to hear is going to sound absolutely impossible. This is the 2002 Ohio State quarter, and this coin has created more millionaires from pocket change than any other quarter in the entire State Quarters series. We're talking about regular people, folks just like you, who checked their change and discovered they were holding a coin worth over $425,000. That's not a typo. $425,000 for a quarter that's been hiding in circulation for over 20 years. Look closely at this Ohio quarter right here. This particular coin shows light to moderate circulation wear. You can see the astronaut figure is still well defined. The Wright Flyer biplane details are sharp, and the date 2002 is perfectly legible. There's some natural toning across the surface, that silvery gray patina that develops from years of handling. The fields show minor contact marks, nothing unusual for a coin that's been in someone's pocket or purse. This is the exact condition of coins you're finding every single day in your change. And the terrifying reality is that you might have already spent a fortune without realizing it. The Ohio quarter entered circulation on March 18th, 2002, as the 17th coin in the 50-state quarters program. The Philadelphia Mint produced 217 million of these quarters, while Denver struck 414 million more. That's over 631 million coins total. But here's what keeps collectors awake at night. Hidden among those hundreds of millions of ordinary quarters are error coins so rare and so valuable that finding just one would be like hitting the lottery jackpot at a casino, except you didn't have to gamble a single penny. The error that's making headlines and breaking auction records is the wrong planche error, specifically Ohio quarter struck on experimental Sacagawea dollar planches. These coins have a golden brass color instead of the normal silver appearance. They weigh significantly more, around 8.1 grams compared to the standard 5.67 grams. And here's the detail that separates a regular quarter from a life-changing discovery. The edge shows no copper stripe, and the reading is either completely absent or extremely faint. In 2019, a 2002 Denver, Ohio quarter struck on a Sacagawea planche graded MS65 by PCGS sold at Heritage Auctions for an absolutely jaw-dropping $425,000. Yes, $425,000 for a single quarter. But the errors don't stop there. There's also the Indiana reverse error, where some Ohio quarters were accidentally struck with the Indiana State reverse design on the back. This is an incredibly rare minting mistake, and when one of these surfaces at auction, collectors go into a bidding frenzy. A certified example sold in 2018 for $98,000, and experts believe that if a higher-grade specimen ever comes to market, it could easily exceed $200,000. Off-center strikes are another treasure hiding in plain sight. When the coin blank shifts during striking, you get a partial design with blank areas visible on the coin. An Ohio quarter that's 25% off-center with the date still showing can sell for anywhere from $800 to $4,000. But if you find one that's dramatically off-center where a large portion of the design is missing but the date and mint mark are still visible, you're looking at $15,000 or more at auction. Broad strike errors, where the coin was struck without the retaining collar, create quarters that are larger in diameter than normal with smooth edges instead of reading. These Ohio broad strikes in high, uncirculated grades have sold for $3,000 to $7,000. And then there are the die crack errors, where a crack in the die creates a raised line across the coin's surface. Major die cracks that run through the astronaut or the Wright Flyer can add $500 to $2,000 to the coin's value. So how do you identify a potentially valuable Ohio quarter? First and most important, check the weight. Get yourself a digital scale that measures to the 100th of a gram. If your Ohio quarter weighs more than 6 grams, you need to stop everything and get that coin professionally authenticated. Second, examine the color under good lighting. If it has any golden, brass, or unusual tint instead of pure silver, that's a massive red flag. Third, look at the edge carefully. No copper stripe and reduced or missing reading means you could be holding a small fortune. Fourth, check for off-center strikes where part of the design is cut off or missing. And fifth, use a jeweler's loop or magnify its value. Well, let's just say it's enough to make even veteran collectors' jaws drop. Stay tuned, and if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button because the next coin story might just blow your mind. Moving on, we've got another coin that might not scream rare at first glance, but it's quietly hiding one of the most shocking value jumps in Kennedy half-dollar history in the 1977 Kennedy half-dollar. Most people overlook this coin because it's from a time when silver was long gone from regular circulation. But what separates this year from the rest isn't silver. It's what the mint didn't intend to happen. The 1977 Kennedy half-dollar is known among collectors for its unexpected surprises. Most were minted in copper nickel just like the rest of the decade, but here's where it gets wild. A tiny number were accidentally struck on leftover 40% silver planches, leftovers from mint sets years earlier. And when one of these turned up in a collector's roll, it shattered all expectations. A genuine 1977 Kennedy half-struck on a silver plancha sold for more than $350,000 and making it one of the most expensive modern circulation coins ever found. Now take a look at the example in front of us. Worn with faint scratches and years of honest circulation, but still holding that unmistakable Kennedy profile. Most 1977 halves look just like this one. Dull from use with the shine long faded. In circulated condition, they're worth face value. But the game changes instantly when the right combination of luster, mint mark, and strike quality comes into play. Collectors prize uncirculated 1977 halves with deep original mint luster. In grades above MS66, prices jump fast, often reaching $3,000 to $5,000 for pristine examples. But the real monsters are the error coins, double die obverses showing clear doubling on In God We Trust, or the date can fetch tens of thousands and sometimes topping $50,000 if verified by PCGS or NGC. Another shocking variety is the 1977D with a filled mint mark, caused by debris clogging the D during striking. Though subtle, it's a variety collectors hunt aggressively, and the best preserved examples have crossed the $25,000 mark at major auctions. Then there are those struck slightly off-center, or with planche clips. Every minting mistake tells a story, and every one adds value. Proof strikes from the San Francisco Mint are a whole different story. Some of these 1977S proofs display mirror-like fields so perfect they look like glass. Deep cameo examples graded PR 70DC-AM are nearly flawless, and one sold for an eye-popping $45,000, making it one of the highest-priced modern proofs of the entire Kennedy series. But perhaps the most jaw-dropping find came from a coin roll hunter in 2018, a 1977 half dollar with a mirror like obverse and frosted reverse, an unusual hybrid error that experts still debate. Its uniqueness pushed its auction value past $400,000, a record that left even seasoned numismatists speechless. Now think about that. A coin you could pull from change worth nearly $500,000 just because of a 1 in a million minting error. It's the kind of story that makes collectors keep searching year after year, hoping lightning strikes twice. So if you have a 1977 Kennedy half dollar tucked away, it's time to take another look. Check its edge. Is it silver all the way through? Hold it under good light. Does the surface gleam like a mirror? And if you spot doubling or any odd strike pattern, don't let it go. You might just be holding one of those once-in-a-lifetime rarities that redefine what worth money really means. And just when you think this can't get any more exciting, the next coin proves otherwise. Because next up, we're moving into a year where a small minting flaw created one of the rarest and most valuable modern Kennedy half dollars ever found, with prices soaring well beyond $500,000. Before we get there, make sure you're subscribed because the next story is one you won't want to miss. Next up, we've got a coin that has fooled even magnifying glass to look for die cracks, doubling, or any other unusual features. Coming in at number 4, and folks, I have to tell you, this next coin is so valuable that when the first major error was discovered, the collector who found it literally quit his job the next day. This is the 2001 New York State Quarter, and what makes this coin absolutely terrifying is that millions of these are still circulating right now, passing through hands every single day, and some of them are worth more than $500,000. Yes, you heard me right. Over $500,000 for a quarter that could be sitting in your change jar at this very moment. Take a look at this New York quarter I'm holding right here. This coin has been in circulation for over 2 decades. You can see moderate wear across the surface, especially on the Statue of Liberty and the state outline. There's natural toning, that grayish silver patina that comes from years of being handled. The date, 1788, commemorating New York statehood, is still clearly visible, and the 2001 date at the bottom is sharp and legible. The fields show typical circulation marks, small nicks and scratches from being tossed into cash registers and vending machines. This is exactly what your quarters look like right now. And the nightmare scenario that keeps coin experts up at night is knowing that people are spending these coins every single day without ever checking them. The New York quarter was released into circulation on January 2nd, 2001, as the 11th coin in the 50-state quarters program. The Philadelphia Mint struck 655 million of these quarters, and the Denver Mint produced 619 million more. That's a staggering 1.27 billion coins flooding into the economy. But buried among those billion coins are minting mistakes so catastrophic and so rare that they've created instant wealth for the lucky few who knew what to look for. The error that's rewriting the record books is the double denomination error, where New York quarters were struck on dime planches. These coins are smaller in diameter than a normal quarter. They weigh only 2.27 grams instead of 5.67 grams, and the design doesn't reach the edge of the coin because the planche is too small. In 2017, a 2001 Philadelphia New York quarter struck on a dime planche, certified MS64 by NGC, sold at auction for a mind-blowing $515,000. $515,000. That's enough money to buy a house, pay off your mortgage, or retire early, and it all came from a minting error that someone almost threw into a parking meter. But there's more. The Sacagawea dollar planche error is another fortune maker with New York quarters. These coins have that distinctive golden brass color. They're significantly heavier at around 8 grams, and the edge shows no copper stripe with minimal or no reading. A certified example in MS66 condition sold in 2020 for $362,000. And here's what makes this even more incredible. These coins were in circulation. Regular people found them in their change and became wealthy overnight simply because they took the time to look. Wrong planche errors on foreign coin blanks have also been discovered. In 2015, a New York quarter struck on a Canadian quarter planche sold for $47,000. The coin had a different weight, a slightly different appearance, and when tested, the metal composition was completely wrong for a U.S. quarter. Experts believe there are more of these foreign planche errors still undiscovered in circulation. Off-center strikes are another jackpot waiting to happen. When the blank isn't properly aligned during striking, you get a coin where part of the design is missing and blank planche is visible. A New York quarter that's 30 to 40% off-center with the date still showing can bring anywhere from $2,000 to $8,000. But if you find one that's dramatically off-center, where more than half the design is missing, but you can still identify it as a New York quarter, you're looking at $20,000 or more. Clipped planche errors, where a piece of the coin blank is missing before striking, create quarters with a straight or curved clip cutting into the design. Depending on the size of the clip and the grade, these can sell for $500 to $3,000, and die adjustment strikes where the dies weren't properly set and created a weak or incomplete strike can be worth $800 to $4,000 in high grades. So how do you spot a valuable New York quarter? First, weigh it. If it's significantly lighter or heavier than normal, you need to investigate further. Second, measure the diameter. If it's smaller than a normal quarter, you might have that dime planche error worth over $500,000. Third, check the color. Any golden or brass tint means possible Sacagawea planche error. Fourth, experienced collectors for decades, the 1980 Kennedy half dollar. At first glance, it seems like one of the most ordinary coins out there. You've seen thousands of them. That worn silvery finish, the same familiar profile, but this year hides a twist that completely changes the game. By 1980, the U.S. Mint had long stopped using silver for circulation halves, switching fully to the copper-nickel composition. So people assumed there was nothing special left about them. But the truth? That's where the biggest shock begins. Hidden among the millions of ordinary 1980 Kennedy halves are a few that defied the Mint's rules. Coins that shouldn't exist but somehow do. One of the most jaw-dropping discoveries came from a roll hunter who stumbled upon what appeared to be a normal 1980 D Kennedy half dollar until he weighed it. It was heavier, too heavy for copper nickel. It turned out to be struck on a silver planche left over from special bicentennial sets years earlier. That one mistake turned a 50-cent coin into a $350,000 treasure, and its discovery sent waves through the numismatic world. Now, the coin you see here has that circulated look. Soft details, a few light scratches, duller luster. In average condition, it's worth face value, maybe a bit more if it's part of a full-year set. But if you find a 1980 Kennedy half dollar that's uncirculated, showing brilliant luster and no signs of wear, you're already talking about a few $100s in value, and that's before we even touch on errors. Because 1980 is infamous for them, one of the most talked about is the double die obverse, where you can see doubling on the date or the motto, "In God We Trust." Some of these are so strong that you can spot them without a magnifier, and when you do, you might just be staring at a $25,000 to $30,000 coin. Then there's the off-metal error, where the coin was struck on planches meant for other denominations. Some 1980 halves were accidentally struck on Susan B. Anthony dollar planches, slightly smaller, thinner, and with a golden hue. When authenticated, those mistakes have sold for $120,000 or more, sometimes even breaking $200,000 for pristine examples. And it doesn't stop there. Proofs from this year, minted in San Francisco, can also carry enormous value if they're perfect. A 1980 S proof, Kennedy half dollar, graded PR, 70 deep cameo with flawless mirror surfaces, once sold for $15,000. And experts believe only a handful exist in that top grade. But one story still makes headlines. The 1980 D Kennedy half dollar struck off-center by 40%, with most of Kennedy's face missing and the Liberty letters cut off. It's one of the most dramatic errors ever found for the series, and it brought in over $400,000 at auction. Collectors still talk about that sale because it proved something remarkable. Even coins from modern decades can become once-in-a-lifetime rarities. So, at number 5, we have one of the earliest state quarters ever released, and what makes this coin absolutely extraordinary is that it contains some of the most dramatic minting errors in the entire state quarters program, with certified examples selling for over $15,000 at major numismatic auctions. This is the 2000 Maryland State Quarter, and hidden among the hundreds of millions produced are error coins that serious collectors are paying shocking premiums to acquire. $15,600 for a quarter that most people spend without a second glance. Look at this Maryland quarter right here. You can see moderate circulation wear across the entire surface. The Maryland State House dome shows good detail with some flattening on the highest points of the architectural features. The text Maryland and the date 1788 commemorating statehood remain clear and legible. The 2000 date at the bottom shows typical handling marks from 25 years of circulation. There is natural toning developing across the fields with minor contact marks, small scratches, and nicks that you would expect from a quarter that has been in circulation for over 2 decades. This coin looks absolutely ordinary, exactly like millions of others. The Maryland quarter was released on March 13, 2000, as the 7th coin in the state quarters program. The Philadelphia Mint produced 678 million of these quarters, while the Denver Mint struck 556 million more. That is over 1.2 billion coins flooding into circulation nationwide. But hidden in that massive production run are minting errors that collectors are actively hunting. The error that is bringing the most shocking premiums is the feeder finger strike. During the minting process, metal strips called feeder fingers guide planchets into position. In extremely rare cases, a piece of this metal strip gets struck by the dies instead of a proper planchet. In 2000, a Maryland quarter struck on a feeder finger piece certified by NGC sold for $15,600. That is over 62,000 times face value for one of the most dramatic minting errors possible. But there are other valuable Maryland errors worth hunting. Wrong planchet errors where Maryland quarters were struck on nickel planchets are another significant find. These coins weigh only 5 grams instead of the normal 5.67 grams and have the silvery appearance of a nickel with no copper core visible on the edge. A certified example-graded PCGS MS65 sold at Heritage Auctions in 2007 for $6,325. Another example in MS66 condition has been documented and certified by PCGS. Missing clad layer errors have appeared on Maryland quarters where one side of the copper-nickel cladding is completely absent, exposing the copper core. A certified example-graded NGCMS 64 shows the distinctive reddish-brown copper color on the affected side. Major die crack errors running through the State House dome or splitting design elements sell for hundreds of dollars depending on severity. Off-center strikes showing 10 to 30% misalignment with full date visible bring $50 to $200. So how do you identify a valuable Maryland quarter? First, check the weight. If it feels noticeably lighter or weighs only 5 grams, you may have a wrong planchet error worth over $6,000. Second, examine the edge carefully. If there is no copper core visible and the coin has a silvery appearance throughout, that is a nickel planchet error. Third, look for any unusual metal pieces or shapes that do not match a normal quarter, indicating a feeder finger strike worth $15,600. Fourth, check both sides for color differences indicating missing clad layer errors. Fifth, inspect for major die cracks through the State House dome. A regular circulated 2000 Maryland quarter is worth face value to 50 cents. Uncirculated examples in MS65 grade bring $8 to $20, but if you find those feeder finger strikes or wrong planchet errors, you are holding a coin worth over $15,000. So before you spend another 2000 Maryland quarter, examine it carefully. Check the weight, check the edge, check for unusual strikes, because that ordinary-looking quarter could be worth $15,600. At number 6, we have a coin that's